Hello, my name is Rita Fuller-Yates and I'm your local Black historian. The street I am walking on is familiar to many of us who grew up in the city of Columbus. It's better known as Long Street. Although this block today is filled with universities, dorms, and the infamous parking lots and garages, over 100 years ago, this was not the case. Today we will discuss how eminent domain affects the Black community of Columbus while addressing the mental consequences of material losses within our community. In the 1920s, this area became a thriving residential community of Black residents. Long Street was considered the Negro thoroughfare of the city. Families with the names of Joneses, Van Hooks, and Douglases lived within this block. Teenage boys would line up at Mr. Wally's barbershop for their very first haircut. John Williams was a successful Black real estate owner who owned many enterprises on this street, including an office building for Black professionals. Not to mention the home of which the man I will discuss in a few minutes lived within this community. I'm standing in front of the statue of a significant Black icon of Columbus by the name of Elijh Pierce. We honor Elijh Pierce and his contribution as an entrepreneur and world-renowned artist. We have a statue standing in the place where his historical barbershop and art gallery once stood for over 50 years. Another small company later purchased the building, and in 1995, the history and the building were lost to eminent domain.
Eminent domain is when the state essentially annexes part of your property in order to repurpose it for public or third-party use. In the United States, this concept is regulated by the Fifth Amendment and requires that the land be used for public benefit and that the owners be fairly compensated. Still, despite being paid for the value of the land, owners are still required to give up the rights to it, whether they want to or not. Additionally, what constitutes public use has been considered overwhelmingly broad. Although most examples of eminent domain concern things like trying to build a highway over an existing neighborhood, there are also times when the repurposed use is actually private and commercial. In one 1954 case, homeowners in the District of Columbia saw their homes destroyed and the land given to private developers to build a shopping center and office buildings. In 2005, another property in Connecticut was taken over and sold for $1 a year to private developers in an attempt to increase city revenue. The following year, President George W. Bush issued an executive order prohibiting private parties from using eminent domain in order to make more money. Another big issue is with the payment in exchange for taken property. Although the Constitution says that there must be just compensation, what exactly qualifies as just? Currently, this is defined as the fair market value. However, problems arise when that value is extremely low, and it prevents those who are bought out from finding equally low-priced housing nearby. In one interesting case, an entire town in Pennsylvania was seized through eminent domain on the basis of safety. A mine fire threatened existing residents, and all the town's houses were condemned. Even the town's postal zip code was revoked by the state. But while eminent domain may actually seem like government overreach in some cases, in countries without it, massive problems arise. In China, homeowners who refuse to move when the government attempts to lay roads or build bridges have cost a considerable amount of money in construction holdups and workarounds. Many of them refuse to leave in an attempt to get more money out of developers, creating an unwinnable situation. So whether eminent domain is a reasonable solution or a violation of rights generally depends on which side of the land you're on.
In 1995, Mr. Khalif, who was the new owner of the historical Elijh Pierce Barbershop and Art Gallery building, told Columbus Dispatch, "State law should do more to protect a small business owner caught in the development path." However, the owner felt compelled to continue to fight for justice once Columbus State University began to use eminent domain for power. In the end, the university did file for eminent domain. Doral Chanel, who was a journalist from the Columbus Dispatch, said the statue was put in the lonely spot because Columbus State wanted to build the parking garage exactly where Pierce's barbershop and gallery were located. Pierce died in 1984 at the age of 92. The story of Elijah Pierce and the role the government played in losing buildings with the story of Black history due to eminent domain is simply one of the examples of many within this community of Bronzeville. One has to ask, although we recognize the wealth lost to future equity of a building, we now wonder, what's the cost to the daily stress endured by a Black person who often is taken advantage of simply because of a lack of knowledge and resources?
It did not come as a liability to the legal system, because they use the scare tactics that if eminent domain comes, then you won't get the value. So your house is worth $1, we're going to give you 50 cents. But if eminent domain comes, you're only going to get a quarter. The process with the eminent domain, it was people's fear allowed them to just walk away. And because they believe that they could not win. And we lost thousands of people in that time of urban renewal. And for us in this area, it was called urban removal, because people were moved out. Lowendick tore down 110 acres of housing in the area, which is north of here by Atchison. The Mount Vernon Plaza, all that was housing, and that all came down 110 acres. And you can imagine what that was like today. It was like $10-12 million then. It was more than that today. But those individuals went south. Those individuals went north to South Linden, to the south side, and other places. Some left the city, but those who could leave and had the ability to leave left. Those who stayed with those who didn't have the option to leave or who wanted to stay. And this is very different. You say, why didn't you go? Because I like here. Why should I leave? So you had a lot of people who say, because this is where my family is. So we had that. So the eminent domain allowed them to come in and move people out at will. And any kind of control is when you can get someone to do what you want them to do without putting a gun to their head. That they self-impose the oppression or the fear, that they just get up and leave. And that's the power of eminent domain without having to take someone to court, is the belief that you can't take it on. Now, those who would have taken them to court probably would have, had a long road, but they would have gotten probably more. But the realtors at that time was the ones doing all the tricks with the people. There were Black and white realtors that made a fortune and giving people next to nothing for their property for the highways. And it was a sad case, but that's what cut the area in half. And this is what we have today. That people took not only their families, but they took their resources. So now the local businesses suffered because they didn't have the people that they were catering to bring the monies here. So again, that whole process of when we're coming into a neighborhood and we throw out there that we're the government, we're urban renewal, it can be implemented in many ways. And here it was just the fear and thought of this is what is going to happen if you don't move. And as a result of that, a lot of people, families are broken up. And we still haven't recovered the population that we had then.
In many cases, the Black community of Columbus purchases their homes and businesses to create a legacy to pass down to their children, just like any other culture. When the city of Columbus continues to use policy and law to hurt the Black community, it ultimately hurts the city's fabric, its history, and its reputation. The constant story of the Black community losing history to parking lots, garages, and freeways should be a problem any city would want to solve, including